So I woke up this morning and I was doing some reading while I was making coffee, and I came across these articles over at Games Radar about how I guess Todd Howard just did a recent series of interviews, and they're talking about how Starfield has 4 times as much dialogue as Skyrim, and mentions how it has his favorite speech system. Now, they've gone through and detailed a few of these things in these articles. I'll have them linked down below. But I think for me, going back and through and kind of looking at things, I think the most interesting thing to me is looking at the line of dialogue. Like they had 60,000 lines of dialogue, and these are approximate in Skyrim versus 111,000 lines of dialogue in Fallout 4. And Starfield so far has almost 253,000. Now, I know some people have immediately said, well, that doesn't mean that those lines of dialogue are going to be any good. And does a line of dialogue count if it's just like, yes, no, that sounds great? Like, what are we counting as a line of dialogue? If we're counting totality, then I think that's the most interesting conversation to have if the majority of those are going to be made up of fully detailed story-based lines of dialogue as opposed to just, little phrases and stuff. But they do talk about how this is going to be one of their bigger games. I can't remember if it's here or in another article. They talk about how it's going to have um, 40 to 50 hours of gameplay for the primary storyline, and then obviously there's going to be all the side missions, and they've touted that number of like 1,000 plus planets that you can go explore for resources and stuff, which doesn't mean those are story based opportunities, but it does mean that there's at least, places to explore and go get resources for crafting and so on and so forth. So it gives you a big place to, go out there and see. But I kind of look at that in the same way that I always looked at like the Mass Effect universe, in the sense that there were always, you know, dozens to hundreds of planets that you could go explore, but most of them were lifeless rocks that you just would send some probes out onto and get some resources from. So it wasn't like you were actually getting story from all of those planets. So that, honestly, when in all the talk about Starfield, the one thing that doesn't give me any hype whatsoever is the whole talk of 1,000 planets. It does nothing for me. But when I hear them say it's 40 to 50 hours of gameplay for the main storyline, that makes me interested because I know, as an example, when Larian Studios said, "Oh, there's 25 hours of storyline in Baldur's Gate 3 early access when it launched," I got 60 hours out of that first playthrough session. 60 hours out of an early access that said it only had 25. So I got more than double what they said because I was playing it in a sort of completionist way. So when I see a game say it's got 50 hours of gameplay, I know that for me personally, I will probably get 80 hours, minimum. Another good example of is God of War Ragnarok. I just finished God of War Ragnarok. Everybody says it has around, I think I read somewhere that it's like 25 hours of main storyline, but I did see someone had done like a full run and put it up on YouTube, and it was just like start to finish all the way through, and it was like an 18-hour plus video. So let's just say 20 hours of storyline for God of War Ragnarok. I beat my first playthrough was at right under 51 hours. So I can pretty much always take a number that the publisher is giving me and say I'm going to get double what they say is the average amount of time. So if they say 40 50 hours, I'll get 80 hours of gameplay out of Starfield. Um so what's interesting to me is the line of dialogue discussions, because I think that that's a really cool conversation to have. Um, in terms of knowing that there's going to be lots and lots of dialogue. They also talk about how they've got this new dialogue system, saying it's more of a classic approach where you're presented with a list of choices, but the facial expressions on the NPCs and how they're emoting are also going to give you a key into what options are going to be the best for that particular NPC. There is a video over here which I do want to play because I haven't actually watch this yet. So I'd like to take the time this morning, if you'll bear with me, and actually watch through this video real quick. Let's go ahead and expand this, make sure we've got this maybe a little more.
The last question we have speech.
Oops, sorry.
checks and dialogue that reflect your character build. Do you want to expand upon that at all?
Yeah, look, we've done a lot of different dialogue systems. We've gone back to kind of I'll call it like a classic Bethesda style dialogue with you're looking at the character and how they emote. You have a series of choices there. The scope of the game, the amount of content we're making is a bit more than we've done before in terms of quests and things like that, but the depth in some of this stuff with the dialogue, we just passed 250,000 lines. And so that's a lot of dialogue, but we've gone through it and the impact is really there. And that includes my favorite speech persuasion system.
You're not talking us.
Hold up. I want to take a look at that.
And that includes my favorite speech persuasion
So persuade. Ooh, there's an attack system as well.
system.
You're not talking us out of this score.
It feels like it's part of the dialogue.
By the way, I love the tape. That tape over his eye is quite nice. So it looks like you're spending points here.
But you're spending points to
you
persuade
are?
them.
Okay.
You willing to give up the ship? Just like that?
It feels natural, not like I've entered some other mode where I'm not doing regular dialogue. It's just I'm in this mode of persuading you to get what I want.
Having a way with words might prove useful.
That's it. That's all the questions that I had for today.
Yeah, this has been great. You know, everybody out there, you know.
All right. So I think for me, this comes back to one of the things I do in most games I play is before I take any combat abilities or anything, if I'm playing an RPG, I've been doing this most recently with The Witcher 3, doing the Axii, I think it is. The very first thing I will do is if there's any sort of persuade dialogue options to level up, when I get a chance to level up my character, um, I'm immediately taking that. Same thing I'm doing right now because I'm doing a Pillars of Eternity playthrough on the Xbox, and I'm also doing the next gen update on the Xbox for Witcher 3. And in both of those games, I have pursued dialogue options before I took any combat options because I'm always going to be in favor of being able to pursue greater dialogue choices because that leads to more storylines, better rewards, better faction, um, hidden side quests, so on and so forth. So I'm always going to be a big fan of that. They also talk about how, uh, because they explain it here a little bit better, they say the player opts for a persuade option in the conversation seamlessly switches to a turn-based persuasion minigame instead of a static-based check that does the work for you. It appears that for every persuasion attempt, players have a limited pool of points to spend on responses to sway the NPC, and the conversation only lasts for a set number of turns, so therefore you have a limited pool. So you have to figure out what's going to be the right thing to hopefully make that work for you. Players can spend their points on a list of color-coded responses worth varying amounts of points. So there's a safe and cheap response versus riskier and more expensive options. Okay. So they're making an educated guess here. Okay. Okay. They're saying here in their estimation, we think that safe lower value responses around the +1 or +2 mark are less likely to actually persuade the MC you're talking to, but will drag the chatter on and save points for better arguments found further in the conversation. Conversely, going all in on a conversation option worth 4 or 5 points early on might be enough to win the dialogue in some early cases, but if it fails, you probably spent most of your points on your opening argument. That's very interesting. So it means there's going to be some strategy to figuring out the conversations, which I think could be cool. But I wonder how much there is a section in here I noticed earlier, character customization. I want to watch this real quick because I want to see if there's anything in here that deals with conversations.
Towards you. And so what we were playing that and it became like very punitive to the player. Your ship would run out of fuel and the game would just stop. You just want to get back to what you're doing. So we've recently changed it where the fuel in your ship and the grav drive limits how far you could go at once, but it doesn't run out of fuel. Maybe
that's
there'll be
cool.
an update or a mod that allows that, but that's what we're doing now.
Constellation members are excited about the character customization and the traits in the game. Can you talk more about what players will experience
Here's
with
what
the
I'm
traits?
interested
I
in.
love our trait list. It's super fun. But each one obviously comes with some sort of negative as well. And we have a way in the game, kind of an activity or quest you can do to remove that trait, as opposed to, don't like my character, I want to start over. Each of them are something like that you can solve that removes the entire trait for the rest of your playthrough.
Okay, so I'm looking at the right here. We've got I'm looking at this whole thing. We get biometric ID, body, face, background. So I'm really hoping, and given the fact that I think this game is going to be having, based on what I understand, like different factions and things that we're going to be able to work through. Um, I'm really hoping that your background and traits are going to be able to give you the option to have your dialogue choices be influenced either by your faction or your charisma or the different traits that you have. I'm sure there's going to be something in here that allows you to, like, there's an extrovert tab, an extrovert one here, and I don't think they actually show any. I don't think they actually show. The introvert is you nearly need your time alone. You have more endurance when adventuring alone, but less when adventuring with other human companions. Can't be combined with extrovert. So I wonder if extrovert just has to do with experience point. Um, Also, this speaks towards a companion system, adventuring with other human companions. That's interesting. That's something I hadn't heard anything about and hadn't considered, that you might be able to have companions in this game or party members that you can go and adventure with. So I don't know. All in all, I'm pretty stoked about what's coming in the pipeline for this game. I don't think that I am someone who is sort of, I don't think I'm hyping this game out of realistic proportions. I have Xbox Game Pass, so knowing that this is going to be a delivery to my console when it comes out, and then I'm going to be able to play it as part of my subscription, is a bonus for me. I generally like Bethesda games. I don't think Skyrim is like the best game ever. I actually like Oblivion better than Skyrim. Elder Scrolls Online is just kind of meh for me. I enjoy Fallout 76. I enjoy the whole Fallout franchise, but I've been playing Fallout 76 for a few months now with Maduros, and I enjoy that game. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm just looking for a good science fiction RPG, and this looks like it's going to be delivering that. I know some people have been having conversations about how this is, comparing up against Star Citizen, and I kind of wish that, that wasn't actually part of the conversation. I did a joke video maybe 6 months ago about how, Star Citizen eat your heart out when they made the announcement of like 1,000 planets, and the fact that the game is actually launching in 2023. So I was just joking about how at the very least, we're going to get a sci-fi RPG at some point down the road with space combat and everything else. And I realize it's not the same thing as Star Citizen, and it's not trying to be the same thing as Star Citizen. But for me, the most important thing is it's going to be a launch title that I can sink my teeth into. It's going to be an RPG from an established company that makes good RPGs, and I have no doubt that I'm going to enjoy it. So this is just more kind of like icing on the cake for me to be able to look at the dialogue options in the game and see where they're going with this system. It sounds cool to me. It's something that's continuing to drive my interest in the title, and I can't wait to play it when it comes out later this year. If you liked what you heard here today, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. Let me know in the comments below if you're also looking forward to this game, what you know about it. Support with a super thanks. Join as a member. Great ways. Also, Patreon page. See you in the next video, everybody. Thanks so much.